the Florida Writer Podcast, a discussion about writing and other things.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Florida Writer Podcast with your host, Alison Nissen. And today I am lucky enough to have a very special guest, Loretta Lynne Finan. Loretta, welcome to the Florida Writer Podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Could you give us a 60-second elevator pitch about who you are and what you write?
I am a neurodiverse writer living in Central Florida. I attended Reed College in Portland, Oregon, where I got my bachelor's degree in English creative writing. I also double majored in physics there. I did a brief summer session at Iowa Writers Workshop, and this was years ago. I published sort of narrowly in college and then took on commercial writing where I did marketing, which was awful. I hated it. And when I became disabled, I didn't have to do that anymore. Now I can write what I want to write. So that's where I'm at, writing my bliss.
Well, everybody, my dog has made an appearance. So if you hear her shaking her ears, obviously there's something going on.
But we love dogs.
All right, I'm going to jump right into physics and writing. How does that blend together?
Well, I got interested in physics when I was traveling as a stand-up comic, and I saw something really strange, like you're hearing in the news now. And I could not explain to myself in any way that made any sense to my brain what it was. So I started just checking out books, astronomy and all of that. I got deep into astronomy. I decided to go back to college at 30, and I was majoring in physics and astronomy in college. And when I moved from community college, from Mount Hood Community College in Portland, Oregon, to Reed College, I was sort of seduced by the English department because I continued to take English and creative writing and all of that. And I said, you need to change your major. Come over and write a thesis with us. At Reed, you have to write a thesis to get your bachelor's. It's crazy stressful. So I did, and I switched my major and went over to the English department and wrote my creative thesis. And I don't know if I answered your question. I've lost my train of thought.
No, it's great. Okay. And you gave me another seed there. You were a stand-up comic.
I was. I've done a lot of things actually in my life. I was a stand-up comic. I did the road for about 6 years. It's fun. Stand-up is fun. It's scary and exciting and a lot of fun to make people laugh. But doing the road is I guess the hard part of it. It's driving and you're in a different town every night and you don't know who you are or where you're going or where you've been. And it just is, I always tell my husband, who's a musician, the road is dark. It's a dark place to live. You don't eat well, you don't sleep well, you don't see any of your friends. You're just, one thing to another. So I enjoyed doing it in the time that I did it, but I left comedy to go back to college when I was 30.
But all of that gives you such rich experience to weave into your writing.
Yeah, it does. I traveled a lot. I met a lot of really interesting people. Travel, whether you do it internationally or within your own country, travel opens your mind in a way that not even reading can do. And I hate saying that being a writer, because reading opens your mind in so many ways. But when you travel to other areas of the country, say you live on the coast and you travel to the middle and you meet the people who grow your food, and you meet the people who are sort of stereotyped in a certain way. And you find out that they're exactly like you. We're all exactly the same. I have such respect for the people I met in the center of the country who are responsible for feeding all of us and doing the hard work of getting trucking and those things of taking care of the society. And I don't think they're given enough credit. And that's one of the things I think I got from comedy the most, was traveling out in those lands that I didn't understand, growing up in California, so to experience Iowa and Nebraska and Ohio and places like that, and those people, it was invaluable. they come into my characters all the time.
Well, they call life a tapestry. And I think, everyone we might be one strand of a color, right? So let's just say I am a green strand and you are a blue strand. But when we weave all the colors together, you think about the fabulous patterns we can make.
Exactly. Yeah. It's sort of like all of life is a vibration, I guess, and blue might vibrate at one frequency and green vibrates at another, but you put those frequencies together and you have a tapestry, a symphony, so I guess I believe in that. I don't really have a lot of beliefs, but I feel that. I'll say that. I intuit that.
I understand. So I also understand that you stopped writing for a while. What happened?
Well, I stopped writing fiction. I was working as a writer in marketing, and I had my own marketing company, and I was just writing all the time. And I just, I didn't write after work at all. And I found that I didn't have any ideas left. I'd given them all to my clients. And so I just had stopped. And when I got sick, I have lupus. And when I got sick with lupus, I could no longer meet those kinds of crazy deadlines and do all the things that I, search out new clients and all the things that it takes to keep a business running. And so I figured just my writing life was over, marketing or fiction or whatever. And it was really a dark time because I already have a certain neurodiversity, and lupus was attacking my nervous system, my brain and my spine. And I thought it was over. I really did. And then I started going back to some of my old philosophy textbooks, and I've been presented with the message in Taoism many times in my life, but wasn't ready to hear it. And I was presented with it again, and I was open to it at that point. And I realized things just are. I was living in the past. I was, living in the past and looking forward to a future that I could only see as bleak. And so that really helped me a lot, just sort of get my head around the fact that, my life has changed completely. It was completely upended, and it took a grieving process to let go of all of that so that I could invite something new in. And the something new that I invited back in was my fiction. And I learned how to use assistive technology, and I had so many stories in me. The Maya Angelou says, what is it? There's no greater sadness what is it? Something like the greatest sadness is bearing the burden of untold stories within you, something like that. And I know I totally monged it up, but that sticks with me a lot. And so I have stories in me, and I have a way to get them out. And so in that way, I look back on that time and I look at it and I said, you didn't know that you had received a gift from the universe in lupus. And I know not many people look at it that way, but it was a gift.
Sometimes life has to knock you upside the head in order for you to get the message.
Exactly.
And I certainly don't wish you any ill will, but I think first of all, I'm very glad you went back to writing, because I was able to read your story, Nothing But, that you had recently published. And I have to tell you, what rich characters you created. I mean, those characters, I was in awe of just everything. I guess it was one main character, but of the way you wove it together, and you really, that story jumped off the page. I was trying to do a little prep work before the interview, and so I stumbled upon it, and I was like, wow, this was amazing. And so I do commend you for that piece of work, and I'm really glad you're back at writing.
Thank you so much. I'm very flattered. Thank you.
Yeah, when we get stuck in the past, what's the expression? The past robs today of tomorrow.
Right.
So, we're not, I always advise people when I'm teaching, I'm like, don't look in the rearview mirror. You're not going that way. You're going forward. Look at the road in front.
Right.
So,
right. Exactly.
it's an easy thing for a professor to say. It's much harder when we're putting it to practice ourselves.
It is. But I mean, that's the key word, right? It's a practice. It's not, there's no goal to it. It's just a daily sort of, this is the way I want to be and react. And sometimes, you don't succeed on those days. You don't always succeed at being, looking forward or looking at today. Instead, you're looking forward or looking back. And it's not a success-based thing. It's a daily practice of being grateful for what you have and moving in a direction that feeds your soul with the skills and abilities and tools that you have.
Absolutely. So you mentioned you have been able to use assistive technology with your writing. How do you use it? What is it like? I don't use any assistive technology unless you want to call AI assistive technology.
Well, that's a whole other topic.
That's just our secret. Don't tell anyone I use it occasionally.
Yeah. I love AI. I use dictation to write. I have a bed here in my office. You can probably see it. And I can lay there propped up on my pillows when my nervous system is freaking out and doesn't want to do anything but lay down. And I can turn on the dictation and dictate to this computer across the room any story that comes to my head, which is really nice because I have carpal tunnel also, and my hands get quite tired. So, and then voice control allows me to control the computer itself, like the menu items and things like that. So I'll say open pages, which is what I use. It's Mac's word processor. And then it'll open it and I'll tell it to start a new template from my Flash, or start a new document from my Flash template or from my short story template, or, something like that. It'll open it up and then I just start talking. And I do have to go back and edit with my hands, which is kind of fun and interesting because sometimes the dictation assistant here's something that's completely bizarre, and I look at it and I say, what on earth did I say that made I don't even know what I was trying to say here because it's so far from anything that belongs there. So a lot of times it's more rewriting than editing, but it helps me a lot. And it's the kind of thing that you can't really do as a job. You can't like lay on your bed and do stuff like that. But when you're doing something creative, you have all these avenues open to you if you're sort of willing to explore them. So even on days when I'm in pain and my legs are seizing or something like that, I can still work. It's fantastic.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, that's really good. I know we use Alexa to create our shopping list, and every week bagels ends up on our list. And we never put bagels on there. We can't figure out what we're saying. That means bagels. So we have all these bags of bagels in our refrigerator.
Yeah, it's not perfect.
Someday we'll figure it out. Like, oh, wait, it was this. But yeah, we can't figure out what bagels is because, you're right. Sometimes you can figure out what it thought you said. Like maybe it'll say, it'll hear grapes instead of, hops or something. But anyway, it's funny. So let's talk about writing with neurodiversity. So you have lupus, as you've mentioned. And I know that is definitely comes with challenges, not just physically, but I guess emotionally. And you said it also affects the way your thinking patterns. Is that true?
Yeah. Autoimmune is weird. I had it when I was a kid. I had polycystic ovary system with this syndrome, which they now know is some kind of an autoimmune disease. And it has a way of it just, your immune system kicks up and then it attacks the healthy part of your body. That's what happens in every autoimmune disease. MS and lupus and rheumatoid arthritis are the three evil sisters of autoimmune. And with MS, it attacks your brain. With rheumatoid arthritis, it attacks your joints. With lupus, it can go anywhere at once. It has jumped from my hips, my hands, my hips, my back, that's part of the central nervous system part, but it jumps all over. I've had horribly disfiguring rashes. My hair fell out in giant handfuls. It's just, it jumps everywhere, and you have to really manage yourself and manage your stress in order to keep the flare-ups down, because every time a person has a flare-up, it pushes forward the disease. And usually with lupus, it pushes it into another place it hasn't affected, like your organs or something like that. So it's migrated into my central nervous system now. And nearest we can figure that's been going on for probably close to 3 years. So, and it is difficult. I'm dyslexic, first of all. And so that's always been a challenge. That was a challenge all through school and math and writing. I understand I have a cognitive problems, learning disabilities. For example, I have an overdeveloped sense of geometry. If I look at something and it's off, it drives me crazy. And I can see 4-dimensional shapes in my head, but I could never represent them mathematically. So on paper, I can't draw it, so I can see things, but I can't draw things. And when I read things, I sometimes read them backwards. And so it's been a challenge. I spent most of my life hiding my learning disabilities, and I couldn't hide them when I got to read. There's no hiding from that school. It is rough. And so that was where it was all revealed when I was in my 30s. And I discovered, that I had built up over the years these coping mechanisms, these little tricks that I learned to get the right answers, even though I didn't quite understand the question. And so in that sense, writing with neurodiversity is, it's an exercise sometimes in frustration because you can't get out what you want to say, but then it's also an exercise in discipline because I'm aware that I think differently than other people. I'm really, when I sit down to edit, I tell myself, okay, now I'm working for the reader. When I write a story, I'm like, I'm working for me. That's my art. It's coming out everywhere on the page, right? But when I sit down to edit, I am really working for the reader, so I can make sure that they understand what I mean. Nothing But is a good example of that. That story started out so much longer than it was, and I had such a difficult time expressing what the painting that I was talking about meant to me, and expressing that section where the main character revisits the painting in its original hanging place in a dive bar in St. Pete. I had a difficult time communicating what I was seeing in my brain. So that particular section probably took 3 times as long as the entire story overall did, So it's, I want to say it's challenging and rewarding. And I think that people with neurodiversity and people like me who've been labeled disabled, which I hate that word, just because I'm not able to work a regular job. I'm able to do other things, so I think that we can sort of internalize that rather than trying to shove it away or hide it like I tried to do for most of my life, but accept it and be grateful for it and recognize that dyslexia, lupus, and anything that you encounter in life, whether you judge it to be a good event or a bad event, has gifts for you. It may bring some sorrow into your life, but it also has gifts, so I know that's very Zen, it's very Taoist, but
well, I make no bones about the fact I grew up with dyslexia and undiagnosed all through college. I figured out ways to cope, as you mentioned, and then spell check came along, which was my very best friend my senior year. So when I wrote my senior thesis, I at least had spell check. And that was the first time I actually went to the writing center that the school offered, which, now as I teach college English, I'm like, go to the writing center earlier than I did. Don't be embarrassed, because I was always embarrassed that I wasn't good enough to be there. Like, they made a mistake. They let me in. So it's always having to prove myself to stay there. And I just didn't want anyone to know, which, it's difficult. But the gift that it has given me is my problem solving skills, because I look at problems from the totally other side of what most people think. Like, people see a problem and I instantly, my brain is like somewhere else, like I'm the other side of it. And so I see connections, and I often think, well, I should have been an engineer or something, used my dyslexia to my advantage. But then that would require me to like screw, and then I'd have to be like left and right. Wait, which way, Lucy? I'm so confused. And then, you get the whole, well, your left and your right, your fingers make a L for a left. I'm like, okay, yeah. And then I put up which hand. I can't tell. Like, flip it around. My son says, yeah, just pick up, because my son has dyslexia. He's like, just pick up the hand you're going to write with. And literally my other hand will come up. When I think about it, my brain instantly flips it around. It's kind of a bizarre thing, but yeah, it can be a gift. And that's, so many of us have, when we write to, I'm not sure if the right word is exercise our demons, sort of to make peace with the things that are inside of us that are causing us to feel different. And then we are able to share it, express it with the world, which, like I said, I'm so glad you're back to writing, because I truly, truly enjoy that story. And I want everyone to go take a peek at it, because it was really good. I'm going to connect it in the show notes. This has been a wonderful conversation. Loretta, how can people get in touch with you?
Well, they can email me, just lorettatherewriter@gmail.com. And then I put up a little blog website on Blogspot, and it's lorettatherewriter.blogspot.com, where I just put up a few of my stories that I'm not, I wasn't really trying to get published. That thing in an Ekphrastic review happened organically and by accident in a way. So, but I have some other stories on there that haven't been published anywhere that I just put up because I wanted to. So they can reach me through that too.
Those are the best types of writing, in my opinion, because you're right. You are writing for you and your reader, not for an editor, not for
money, not for success. Or I write and I don't expect anything out of it. I write and I release it, and that's it. So,
well, Loretta Lynne Finan, are you ready to switch to our rapid fire questions?
Okay. All right. Let's go.
Do you have any stickers on your refrigerator?
No.
Oh, fantastic. We've got magnets all over. And then they're holding a couple of wedding invitations, which is fun because it's our kids.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Do you enjoy the water?
I did. I love to swim now. It's the one thing I can do for physical exercise, but I used to love boating and fishing. When I first moved to Florida, I used to go fishing all the time. But it's sort of on the list of things I can't really do anymore. I can swim in the Gulf, but I can't swim on the East Coast because the waves will beat me to death. So, but I do love the water. I'm an Aquarius. I was born in Northern California on the ocean, Humboldt Bay, and I grew up around water. And when we moved to Sebring, I was like, oh, there's Lake Jackson. Okay, we have a lake. I'm good then.
Finally, what is your favorite time of year?
I guess I'd have to say fall. It's sort of a reflective time. It's a time of change. It's a time of sort of embracing change. You can't make the leaves not fall from the trees. You have to appreciate it in its naked beauty.
Except for you, Loretta, so you can have green all year long.
That's true. And also, summer used to be my favorite, but in Florida, it's hard to make summer your favorite season because it's like I tell my friends up north, they say, how can you stand it in the summer? You can't even go outside. And I said, yeah, but in the winter, you can't go outside. So, every place has an indoor season. Ours just happens to be summer. They cower in front of the heaters. We cower in front of the air conditioners.
Loretta Lynne Finan, thank you so much for stopping by.
Thank you. And thank you for having me. And thank you for the show. I enjoyed listening to the other authors.
Oh, I love hearing that. Thank you. You have been listening to another edition of the Florida Writer Podcast with your host, Alison Nissen. Alison out. Woo! We're all done.
Oh, thank you. Well, that was a lot of fun.
Loretta Lynne Finan is a neurodiverse writer from a long line of Irish-American yarn spinners. She lives in small-town Florida with her musician husband, where they spend their days puttering around with DIY projects, home improvement, and creating art for its own sake. For more information about Loretta Lynne Finan, visit her website, lorettatherewriter.blogspot.com. For more information about the Florida Writers Association, visit us at floridawriters.org. Until next time.